The Oasis Travel Center sits alone on a desolate stretch of Interstate 8, about 65 miles east of San Diego, where the Sonoran Desert stretches endlessly in all directions. Most people driving through don't even notice that it exists until their gas gauge hits dangerously low or their bladder threatens to burst. That's when our neon sign becomes a beacon of salvation in the wasteland. I've worked the night shift here for 4 years now. The pay is decent, the work is mostly easy, and the solitude, it suits me. But there's a reason that we have trouble keeping employees. When I was hired, the owner, a weathered and gaunt woman named Valeria Kovac, handed me a laminated card along with my name tag. Her eyes, sharp as obsidian and just as dark, locked onto mine as she said, "These rules are non-negotiable. Break them and I cannot guarantee your safety, or anyone else's." At the time, I think I laughed nervously, but 4 years later, I don't find anything about the rules to be funny. Rule 1. If somebody pulls up in a black Suburban with tinted windows between midnight and 4 a.m., lock all of your doors immediately. Do not answer the intercom. Don't make eye contact through the windows. Rule number 2. Do not, under any circumstances, accept cash or credit from the red-haired woman who limps. If she appears, direct her to pump 3 and press the emergency button under the register twice. Rule 3. If a customer says that they're just passing through from Crawford, call this number immediately. 602-555-3187. Say nothing else to them. Rule 4. Should the lights flicker 3 times in succession, go directly to the supply closet. Lock yourself inside until exactly 5:17 a.m. Ignore all sounds no matter what or who you hear. Rule 5. Never allow anyone to use the bathroom in the northwest corner, even if all other facilities are occupied. If asked specifically about that bathroom, say that it's under renovation. Rule 6. If a child enters alone between 1 and 5 a.m., do not speak to them. Press the blue button beneath the coffee station and wait for Valeria, regardless of whether she's scheduled. Rule 7. Should you encounter a man in a beige trench coat who asks for directions to the meeting place, direct him to the storeroom and then leave the building immediately. Drive away and do not return until daylight. I thought these were the paranoid ramblings of a woman who had spent too many years alone in the desert heat. But then I experienced the rules firsthand. It happened during my second week on the job. The night had been quiet, just a few truckers stopping for coffee and a couple of exhausted families heading to San Diego. By 1 a.m. the place was empty, and I was restocking the snack aisle when headlights swept across the windows. A black Chevy Suburban pulled into the lot, moving slowly and deliberately. It circled the building once before parking directly in front of the main entrance, its engine still running. The windows were tinted so dark they looked opaque even under our bright overhead lights. Rule 1 immediately came to mind. I moved quickly to the front, hitting the master lock switch that secured all the doors. Just as the system engaged with a heavy thunk, the Suburban's driver's door opened up. The man who stepped out was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed entirely in black tactical gear, including gloves and a fitted cap that shadowed his face. He moved with military precision toward the doors, testing the handle when he reached it. Finding it locked, he tilted his head slightly, and then raised his hand and tapped on the glass, 3 precise and measured taps. When I didn't respond, he cupped his hands around his eyes and leaned close to the glass, trying to peer inside. I stepped back, keeping the counter between us, avoiding looking directly at his face as per the rule. "Hello?" His voice came through the intercom system. "I need assistance with fuel. My card isn't working." I remained silent, watching him out of the corner of my eye. I know someone's in there. He continued, his tone level but with an underlying tension that raised the hair on my arms. This is government business. Open the door. He reached into his pocket and pressed something against the glass. It looked like a badge, though I couldn't make out any details without looking directly at it. Last chance, he said after a full minute of silence. Open the door or there will be consequences. I stayed frozen in place, heart hammering in my chest. The man finally lowered his hand and spoke again, his voice different now, deeper, with an unnatural resonance that made the glass vibrate slightly. We know what you're hiding here. We'll be back. He returned to the Suburban and sat inside for exactly 17 minutes. I timed it on the security monitors before finally driving away, headlights off as the vehicle disappeared into the darkness. When Valeria arrived for her morning shift, I told her what had happened. Did you look at his face? She asked me sharply. No, I replied. I followed the rule. She nodded, visibly relieved. Good, good. They've been coming more frequently lately. Who are they? I asked. Valeria's gaze drifted to the window. People who want something that we protect. That's all you need to know for now. A few days later, there was a news story about a convenience store robbery about 30 miles down the interstate. The cashier had been found with precise surgical incisions across his body, still alive but with several missing organs. Witnesses described a black Suburban leaving the scene. It was a busy evening in the summer tourist season. The store was packed with travelers buying snacks, using the bathroom, and filling up on gas before tackling the long desert stretch ahead. I was ringing up a family of 5 when I noticed her enter. She was perhaps in her late 30s with vibrant copper hair that fell in waves past her shoulders. She wore a floral summer dress that seemed too cheerful for the desolate surroundings, and she moved with a pronounced limp, favoring her left leg. There was nothing immediately threatening about her. She browsed the aisles methodically, selecting a bottle of water, a sandwich, and a travel-sized bottle of aspirin. As the crowd thinned out, she approached the counter, smiling pleasantly. Just these, please, she said, her voice melodic, with a slight accent that I couldn't place. And 20 on pump 5. As I began scanning her items, the second rule flashed through my mind. I glanced at her red hair. I noticed the limp again as she shifted her weight. I'm sorry, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but pump 5 is out of order. Would pump 3 work instead? Her smile faltered slightly. I prefer pump 5. Are you sure that it's not working? Positive, I lied. Maintenance is coming tomorrow. She studied me for a long moment, her green eyes unnervingly bright under the fluorescent lights. All right then, pump 3 it is. As she gathered her items, I discreetly pressed the emergency button twice, as per the rule. That'll be $26.78, I said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a crisp $100 bill, holding it out to me. When I hesitated to take it, her smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp. Is there a problem? She asked. We don't accept bills over 50 after 8 p.m., I improvised. Company policy. Her expression hardened. I don't have anything else. I can void the transaction, I offered. Before she could respond, the door to the back office opened, and Valeria emerged even though she wasn't scheduled that night. She took in the situation at a glance. Marjorie, she said, addressing the red-haired woman. It's been a while. The woman Marjorie turned, her stance shifting subtly into something more predatory. Valeria, still playing gatekeeper, I see. You know the arrangement. Valeria replied calmly. Pump 3 only. No interactions with the staff. Marjorie's pleasant demeanor evaporated entirely. The arrangement is growing tiresome. There will be a renegotiation soon. Not while I draw breath, Valeria said. Marjorie laughed to sound like glass breaking. Oh, that can be arranged. She turned back to me, and for a split second her face seemed to ripple, the skin beneath the surface moving in ways that defied anatomy. And then she collected her items, leaving the $100 bill on the counter. Keep the change, she said, her voice distorted now, layered with what sounded like multiple voices speaking in unison. Consider it a down payment on what's coming. She limped out of the store. Through the windows, I watched her approach Pump 3, where she began fueling a sleek red sports car that I hadn't noticed arrive. Don't touch the money, Valeria warned when I reached for it. She produced a pair of tongs from beneath the counter and carefully picked up the bill, dropping it into a metal container that she pulled from her pocket. What was that about? Who is she? Someone who tests boundaries, Valeria replied cryptically. We have an understanding, but she's always looking for weaknesses. What would have happened if I had taken her money? Valeria sealed the container with a twist. The last cashier who did developed a flesh-eating infection that started in his fingertips. Doctors had to amputate both hands. He was lucky too. The one before him wasn't so fortunate. She never elaborated on what had happened to the one before, and I never asked. Later that night, I reviewed the security footage out of curiosity. In every frame where Marjorie should have appeared, there was only a blur of static, as if the camera couldn't quite capture her image. It was a quiet Tuesday night in March. A dust storm had swept through earlier, leaving a fine layer of grit on everything outside and keeping most travelers off the road. I had spent most of my shift cleaning and organizing, and grateful for the lull. Around 2 a.m., the bell above the door had chimed. The man who entered was unremarkable in almost every way. Average height, medium build, brown hair that was cut short, and he was wearing jeans and a windbreaker. He nodded politely and headed straight for the coffee station. After filling a large cup, he grabbed a prepackaged Danish and approached the register. There was nothing suspicious about him. He looked like any other tired traveler stopping for caffeine. Just these, he said, placing his items on the counter. Oh, and I need to fill up my tank. I'm just passing through from Crawford. The words sent a chill through me. Let me check on something first. I'll be right back, I said, reaching for the phone. I dialed the number from memory. The line connected immediately. No one spoke, but I could hear breathing on the other end. I have a customer here who says he's passing through from Crawford, I said, keeping my voice steady. The line went dead. I hung up, forcing a smile. Sorry about that. Which pump are you on? The man's demeanor had changed subtly. His relaxed posture tightened, and his eyes, previously tired, were now sharply focused, constantly scanning the store. Pump 2, he said cautiously. Is everything okay? Fine, I assured him. That'll be $7.35 for the coffee in Danish. He paid with exact change, his movements now precise and economic. As he turned to leave, he paused. You should consider finding another job. Places like this, they attract attention. The wrong kind. Before I could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles made us both turn toward the windows. 3 unmarked black vans had pulled into the lot, surrounding the man's sedan. Dang, he muttered. Too slow. He glanced at me. You might want to step into the back room. I remained frozen behind the counter as 6 individuals in unmarked tactical gear emerged from the vans. They didn't rush or draw any weapons, just formed a loose perimeter around the building. The man set down his coffee with a resigned sigh. Tell Valeria that Crawford sends his regards. The game is changing. A woman entered the store, tall with close-cropped gray hair and the bearing of somebody accustomed to authority. She wore a dark suit with no identifying insignia, but the others clearly deferred to her. "Agent Pearson," she addressed the man, "you're becoming predictable." "Director Walsh," he replied with a thin smile. "Still doing the consul's dirty work, I see." She ignored the jab, turning to me instead. "You followed protocol correctly, thank you." The man, Agent Pearson, was escorted out without resistance. As Director Walsh turned to leave, I found my voice. "What is Crawford? Who are these people?" She studied me for a moment. "How long have you worked here?" "Well, almost a year now," I replied. "Ask Valeria about the history of this place, about what sits beneath it. If she trusts you enough to tell you, then perhaps you deserve to know." Within 15 minutes, they had all departed. Agent Pearson in one of the vans, his sedan left behind. By morning, the car was gone without a trace. When I asked Valeria about what lay beneath the travel center, her expression darkened. "Oh, some questions are better left unasked. The rules will keep you safe. That's all that you need to concern yourself with." But that night, as I was sweeping the floor near the northwest bathroom, I noticed something odd about the tiling. In certain light, what appeared to be ordinary floor tiles revealed faint outlines of what looked like a massive trapdoor. A severe thunderstorm had rolled in from the west, bringing with it howling winds and rare, violent rainfall that pounded against the roof like artillery fire. Few travelers braved the weather. The store had been empty for hours. I was organizing the magazine rack when the lights flickered once, twice, and then a third time in rapid succession. Rule 4 instantly flashed in my mind. Moving quickly, I locked the front doors, powered down the registers, and made my way to the supply closet at the back of the store. It was a small space, crowded with cleaning supplies, extra stock, and a small desk with a monitor displaying security camera feeds. I closed the heavy door behind me and I engaged both locks, a standard deadbolt and a heavy-duty slide bolt that seemed excessive for storing paper towels and window cleaner. Checking my watch, I saw that it was 1:42 a.m., nearly 4 hours to wait. The first hour passed uneventfully. Rain continued to lash against the building and occasional thunder rattled the windows. I watched the empty store and the security monitors, wondering if the rule was merely a precaution against power outages. But then at precisely 2:17 a.m., the cameras went dead. One moment they displayed the empty store and the next, it was nothing but static. A minute later, I heard the front doors open despite having locked them myself. Heavy dragging footsteps moved slowly across the sales floor, accompanied by what sounded like labored breathing, wet and ragged inhalations that carried clearly over the storm. "Hello?" A man's voice called out. "Is anyone working tonight? I need help and I've been in an accident." His voice sounded strained, bubbling with what might have been blood or water. The footsteps continued, moving methodically up and down each aisle. "Please, I'm hurt badly and I just need to use your phone." A thud against the supply closet door made me jump. "I know you're in there. I can smell you. Please, I'm dying." Something wet seeped under the door, not water, but something darker and thicker. It smelled of copper and salt. "They ran me off the road, cut me open and left me to die. Please, I have children waiting for me at home." I remained silent, my heart pounding so hard I feared the person, or whatever it was, could hear it through the door. "It hurts so much." The voice whimpered, genuinely agonized. "I won't last much longer. Please." The handles rattled violently, the entire door shaking under tremendous pressure. The slide bolt groaned but held firm. After several minutes of assault on the door, everything went quiet. I thought perhaps that it had given up, until I heard a new sound from the air vent above. liquid dripping slowly and steadily. That same copper smell intensified. "If you won't let me in, then I'll come to you." What followed was a grotesque, wet, slithering sound, as if something large and boneless was forcing itself through the narrow ventilation system. Dark fluid began to pour more rapidly from the vent, gallons more than any human body could contain. I pressed myself into the farthest corner, watching in horror as the substance pooled on the floor, beginning to take shape, rising and forming appendages that were almost but not quite human. Then, just as the mass began to resemble a crude human figure, the fluorescent light in the closet brightened intensely, buzzing like an insect swarm. The fluid thing recoiled from the light, releasing a sound no human throat could produce, a multi-tone scream that vibrated at different frequencies simultaneously. The substance retreated back through the vent with that same slithering sound, leaving only a dark stain on the floor that evaporated within minutes, as if it had never existed. For the remaining hours, I heard a cacophony of voices, men, women, children, all pleading for help, describing increasingly horrific injuries and situations. Fingernails scratched at the door, fists pounded against the walls. Something heavy repeatedly threw itself against the outer barriers. At exactly 5:17 a.m., everything stopped. The cameras flickered back to life, showing an immaculate and empty store. When I finally unlocked the door and stepped out, there was no evidence of any disturbance, no footprints, no stains, no damage to the front doors. When Valeria arrived at 6 a.m., I told her what had happened, and she nodded grimly. "It comes with the storm," she said. "Always has." "What is it?" I asked. She studied me as if deciding how much to reveal. "Something hungry," she finally said. "Something that feeds on desperation and pain. It knows what makes you want to help, what makes you open doors that should stay shut." "Has anybody ever opened the door?" I asked. "One time, before my time. They found parts of him scattered across 3 countries. It happened during a particularly busy Saturday afternoon. I wasn't usually scheduled for day shifts, but I was covering for a coworker. The store was packed with weekend travelers, families on road trips, and motorcyclists touring the desert highways, truckers that were on tight schedules. All 3 public restrooms were occupied with lines forming when a frazzled-looking woman approached the counter. She had a squirming toddler on her hip who was clearly in distress. "Excuse me," she said urgently. "My son can't wait any longer. Is there another bathroom that we can use? Please." I was about to direct her to the employee restroom when she pointed directly to the northwest corner. "What about that one? Nobody's using it." "Oh, I'm sorry, that one's under renovation," I said automatically. "But you can use our employee restroom." I reached for the key beneath the counter. The woman frowned, still looking at the northwest bathroom. "That's odd, it doesn't look under renovation. I mean, the door's open." I froze. The door to the bathroom was always locked, like always. "Stay here," I told her, handing over the employee restroom key. "Use this one instead." I approached the bathroom cautiously. Sure enough, the door stood slightly ajar, despite the out-of-order sign still hanging on it. A maintenance cart was parked nearby, which explained things somewhat. Ramirez, our daytime handyman, must have been working on something. I called out, "Ramirez, you in there?" No response. Protocol would have been to find Valeria immediately, but she was off-site at a supplier meeting. Against my better judgment, I pushed the door open wider. The bathroom appeared ordinary at first glance. A single toilet, sink, hand dryer, tiled floor, and walls painted the same beige as the rest of the building. Ramirez's tools were scattered on the floor, including a pry bar that had been used to remove several floor tiles, revealing concrete underneath. As I stepped inside to investigate, I noticed faint markings etched into the exposed concrete. Not random scratches, but deliberate patterns. The markings were old, the concrete around them discolored with age. In the center of these markings were something that made my blood run cold. A small opening no wider than a quarter that seemed to descend into perfect darkness. Ramirez's flashlight lay nearby, still on, its beam directed into the hole. I knelt down to look closer, careful not to touch anything. A current of air emerged from the opening. Not the stale air that you would expect from a sealed space, but fresh and moving air that carried an unfamiliar scent, metallic and organic at the same time. As I leaned closer, I heard something, distant at first and then growing louder. Voices, hundreds of them, whispering in languages that I didn't recognize. They ebbed and flowed like ocean waves, occasionally rising in what sounded like pain or desperation before subsiding again. A sudden scraping sound from deeper within made me jerk back. Something was moving down there, something solid against stone. I scrambled to my feet and back toward the door, only to collide with someone behind me. I spun around to find Ramirez, his face ashen and eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't be in here. No one should be in here." His hands trembled as he gathered his tools. "I was just checking the seals. Valeria has me inspect them monthly, but this time," he glanced at the hole in the floor. "This time it opened wider. They're getting closer." "What do you mean? What's down there?" Ramirez shook his head. "Ask Valeria if you want to know. I just do what I'm told. I check the seals, do my job. 20 years I've worked here and I've never asked questions. Neither should you." He ushered me out and then locked the door behind us with a heavy key that I had never seen before. He removed his out-of-order sign and replaced it with a new one that read, "Biohazard Contamination. Authorized personnel only." When I finally had a chance to speak with Valeria the next day, I told her what I had seen. She was furious, not at me but at the situation in general. "Oh, the seals are failing faster than I expected," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "We'll need to strengthen them again." "What seals? What's underneath this place, Valeria?" She regarded me for a long moment. "This area was considered cursed by the native tribes. They called it the mouth, where something hungry lurked underneath." "You're talking about some kind of supernatural?" She cut me off. "I'm talking about something very real and very dangerous and very contained, as long as the rules are followed and the seals are maintained." "So the bathroom. It's built directly over the primary access point. The original gas station from the 60s used that space to access whatever was down there. They thought that they could use it and control it. Well, they were wrong." She sighed heavily. "My family has maintained this place for 3 generations, keeping people safe and keeping it contained." "What happens if it gets out?" I asked. "It won't. Not while I'm alive." The next day, a construction crew arrived to renovate the northwest bathroom. They worked behind sealed plastic barriers for a week, and when they finished, the room had been converted into a storage closet. No toilet, no sink, just shelves of supplies and a new concrete floor painted bright red. Rule 6 regarding children entering alone between 1 and 5 a.m. came into play during a very cold night in January of my 4th year. The temperature had dropped unusually low for the desert, hovering just above freezing. A bitter wind whipped across the empty parking lot, and I had cranked up the heat inside the store to combat the chill seeping through the windows. At 2:38 a.m., the door chimed. I looked up from my paperback to see a small figure step inside, a girl no more than 7 or 8 years old. She wore a thin summer dress, completely inappropriate for the weather, and no shoes. Her long dark hair was tangled and unwashed, her skin pale to the point of being almost translucent. Rule 6 immediately came to mind, but something about this child made me want to break it. Her vulnerable appearance, the clothing that didn't fit for the weather, the fact that she was alone in the middle of the night. Every protective instinct screamed to help her. But I had learned by this point that you had to trust the rules. Without speaking, I moved to the coffee station and pressed the blue button hidden underneath. The girl watched me with unnervingly dark eyes. She began walking slowly around the store, trailing one finger along the shelves, leaving a faint smear of something dark that I initially mistook for dirt. "Aren't you going to ask if I'm lost?" she finally said, her voice sweet but with an underlying timbre that raised the hair on my arms. Most grown-ups would ask if I'm lost. I remained silent, watching her carefully from behind the counter. "I am, you know," she continued. "Lost. I have been for a very long time." She picked up a candy bar, examined it, and placed it back on the shelf. Where her fingers had touched, the wrapper was discolored as if burned. "My mommy and daddy left me here, right on this spot, though it looked different then. There was no store, just dirt and a very big hole." She smiled, revealing her teeth. "They pushed me in. I've been trying to climb out ever since." I felt cold sweat trickle down my spine. The girl approached the counter, moving with an odd and fluid grace that seemed more like floating than walking. "I'm so hungry. Won't you help me? Just a little food, or maybe..." She extended one small hand toward me. "Maybe you could take my hand and help me find my parents. I think they went that way." She pointed towards the northwest corner of the store. The front door chimed again as Valeria burst in. "That's enough," she said sharply, addressing the girl. The child turned, her expression morphing from innocent to feral rage in an instant. "Gatekeeper," she hissed, the word distorted by too many teeth. "Always interfering. You know the boundaries. Return to your domain." "The seals are weakening," the girl said. "Soon, no rules will bind us." "Not in my lifetime," Valeria stated. The girl, or whatever she was, laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. "Your lifetime grows shorter each day, Gatekeeper. We can smell your mortality." "Perhaps, but my successor is already chosen and prepared." This seemed to give the creature pause. It studied Valeria carefully and then shifted its attention to me. "No," it whispered. "You wouldn't dare. They are not of the bloodline." Valeria smiled thinly. "Times change and methods adapt. Now go before I strengthen the binding further." The girl's form seemed to flicker, like a television with poor reception. For a split second, I glimpsed something else beneath the child's disguise. Something twisted and ancient, with too many limbs and a gaping maw filled with rings of teeth. And then she turned and walked stiffly toward the exit. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at me. "See you soon, successor," she said in that horrible multi-voice. "Perhaps I'll wear a different face next time. One you can't resist helping." After she left, I leaned heavily against the counter, legs weak with delayed terror. "Who was that?" "One of the hungrier ones," Valeria replied grimly. "They're getting bolder and testing how far they can push." "It called me a successor." Valeria sighed heavily. "I'm sick," she said bluntly. "It's terminal, 6 months, maybe less." The news hit me hard. Despite how strange she was, I had grown to respect this woman. Somebody needs to be around to keep things in order. Somebody there to enforce the rules. I've been watching you for 4 years now. You follow instructions, you don't panic when there's pressure, and you pay attention. So you want me to take over? I don't have much family left. My daughter wants nothing to do with this place, says it's a curse and not a responsibility. Perhaps she's right, but somebody must do it. But why me? Why not Ramirez or one of the other longtime employees? Well, because they haven't encountered all 7 roles and survived. You have, and that makes you qualified. And what if I say no? Well, then the rules will fail, the seals will break, and what's beneath will devour everything for 100 miles in every direction. And that's just for starters. She let that sink in before adding, just think about it. You have time to decide, but not that much time. The final rule about the man in the beige trench coat asking for the meeting place was triggered just 2 weeks ago. It was evening and the store was filled with the usual mix of truckers, tourists, and locals. I was handling the rush pretty well considering how distracted I had been since Valeria's revelation about her illness and her plans for me to take over. Around 8:45 p.m., as the crowd was thinning out, the door chimed and a man entered wearing a beige trench coat despite the warm spring weather. He was an average guy with no features that were somehow difficult to focus on. He seemed relatively average, with nondescript features that were somehow difficult to focus on, as if my eyes kept slipping away from his face whenever I tried to study it. He browsed casually for a few minutes before approaching the counter. Something about him made the other customers unconsciously move away, leaving a bubble of empty space around him. Excuse me, he said, his voice oddly flat, lacking the natural cadence of normal speech. I'm looking for directions to the meeting place. My mouth went dry. The storeroom is through that door, I said, pointing to the back of the store. 3rd door on the left. He smiled, a movement of lips that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you. They're waiting for me. As he walked toward the back, I noticed something disturbing. His feet made no sound on the linoleum floor, and from certain angles he appeared slightly translucent, the shelving units visible through his form. Following the rule, I quickly locked the register, grabbed my keys, and headed for the exit. As I reached the door, I heard a commotion from the back. Raised voices, something heavy falling. Every instinct told me to leave as instructed, but concern for the remaining customers made me hesitate. There were still 4 people in the store, a young couple selecting snacks, an elderly man paying at the self-checkout, and a truck driver filling up a thermos of coffee. Everyone needs to leave, I announced, trying to keep my voice steady. Store emergency, please exit immediately. The customers looked confused but responded to the urgency in my voice. As they filed out, I held the door open, watching anxiously as they made their way to their vehicles. What's happening? The truck driver asked, hesitating at the threshold. Gas leak, please, just go. Once everyone was outside, I locked the door behind me and hurried to my car. As I fumbled with my keys, I glanced back at the store. Through the windows, I could see the lights flickering violently. Shadows moved across the glass, elongated in human shapes that twisted and writhed in ways that weren't right. I drove away as instructed, hands shaking on the steering wheel. About half a mile down the road, I pulled over at a safe distance and had called Valeria. He's here, I said when she answered. The man in the trench coat. I directed him to the storeroom and evacuated the building. Good, she replied, her voice tight with tension. Stay away until morning, I'll handle this. Handle it how? Should I call the police? No police, they can't help with this. Just stay away until sunrise, promise me. I promised and ended the call, but I couldn't bring myself to leave entirely, Instead, I parked on a hill overlooking the travel center, watching from a distance. For nearly an hour, nothing visible happened. The building stood silent and still under the desert moon. And then at exactly midnight, all the lights went out. In the darkness, the building seemed to shift. It's hard to describe exactly what I saw. The structure appeared to distort, the walls bulging and contracting like it was breathing. A column of darkness rose from the center of the roof, not smoke but an absence of light, a vertical tear in reality that stretched up towards the stars. It pulsed with negative energy, drawing light inward rather than emitting it. The air around seemed to vibrate, which I felt in my bones rather than heard. This continued for exactly 17 minutes before a flash of white light erupted from the building. It was so intense that I had to cover my eyes. When I looked back, everything seemed to be normal again. The lights were back on, the building stood solid and unchanged. No sign of what had occurred. Unable to resist, I drove back to the station, arriving just as dawn broke over the horizon. Valeria's car was parked outside along with a vehicle that I didn't recognize, an unmarked white van with government plates. Inside, I found Valeria sitting at one of the customer tables with 3 individuals in formal attire. 2 men and a woman, all with the same clinical, detached demeanor that I had observed in Director Walsh months prior. The store itself was immaculate. No evidence of what had occurred, nothing unusual at all. Even the coffee machine was brewing fresh, the aroma filling the air with deceptive normalcy. Valeria looked exhausted but unharmed. She nodded when she saw me. "Oh, perfect timing, we were just discussing your future role." The woman, rather stern-looking, studied me. "This is your successor. Are you certain that they're up for the job? They've survived all 7 rules." Valeria replied, "I think he's more than qualified." "Surviving isn't the same as understanding," one of the men commented, "or accepting." Valeria turned to me. "Well, that's the question, isn't it? Do you accept?" I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "You really think that I'm up for this? I mean, what even happened last night? Who was that guy in the trench coat? I mean, what really lurks below?" "You'll know everything in time, don't you worry," Valeria says. "So, what do you say?" Honestly, I don't know. It all sounds great and heroic and like the right thing to do, but I just don't feel up to it. I kind of just want to call it a day and go home and chill out. Sorry, but I think that's a no for me. I'll probably just go find a different job. Yeah, sorry. See ya.